Welcome, everyone. I'm Mariquita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org is founded in 1998 and is a leading resource for faith-based animal rights veganism. Led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we provide free resources for people seeking to live compassionately towards all creatures. Our extensive library includes vegan sermons and commentaries, animal rights strategies, action alerts, events, and works by various vegan authors. We also sponsor websites for animal rights organizations. Our mission is to unite compassionate individuals worldwide who honor the dignity of all creatures. Today, we're very honored to welcome Liam Gray. Liam is the founder, executive director of the Wilberforce Institute, a libertarian conservative nonprofit organization focused on pro-liberty and free market strategies to end animal cruelty. The Wilberforce Institute is especially focused on cutting government programs that cause animal suffering, such as Biden's billion-dollar owl killing program, which Liam wrote about in the Wall Street Journal. Prior to starting the Wilberforce Institute, Liam was a U.S. Army 82nd Airborne Infantry Paratrooper who served in Afghanistan, a daily caller editor, and a Republican political operative and communications consultant for campaigns across the country. So I'm excited to talk to you, Liam. I've heard some wonderful things about you from our good friend Mark. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited about this.
Well, I love that. I love that we're having a conversation about what we can do politically in the government. And I think when people are able to have conversations without judgment or without, coming in and saying, this is who I am and this is who you are, and now we got to fight it out, when we're able to just have a conversation about what's going on and how can we come together to help animals. It's so important. So,
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think in general, although we're getting more and more divided, and it feels like the division's never been greater, there's these moments that come up frequently where we realize a lot of us think the same things, no matter what side of the political aisle we fall on. And it's just, there's this kind of perpetual framing keeping us apart. I think animals, and just helping animals and caring for animals is something that virtually everyone agrees with, everyone believes in, at their core, or at least at some level. And really our most operandi is trying to help people find ways to get attached to helping animals and help people find ways to find animals that wouldn't ordinarily be included in the discussion and in the movement.
Right. Yes, I totally agree with you. So, all right, let me find out first about what was the beginning of your vegan journey? What led you to become a vegan?
Yeah, so became vegetarian first. It's funny. The first time I decided I didn't want to eat meat was when I was about 5 years old, and I told my parents, and yeah, it was about as soon as I figured out that it was animals. And yeah, when they said chicken, they meant literally chicken. And I didn't grow up. I grew up, with a family that eats lots of meat, and so the answer was basically no. And so it was something I wrestled with for years. And just, that got heightened, I think, when I was in college, early college, just having some, conversations, and never really having a good argument. I think that's one of the things that I see a lot is where people, they go, oh yeah, I don't really, they don't necessarily have a great argument for eating meat, but it's just what they've always done. And so when it was when I was in the Army, I think 2008 or so, that I first stopped eating meat. And I did that very, very quietly. And it was just, a matter of just kind of, getting sides when I went into the dining facilities and things like that. And, I never mentioned it to people. I didn't want to have like the discussion. Didn't know how that would go over in the Army world. I think I came up here and there, but by and large, I lived when I was in Afghanistan, close proximity of people, just, doing my quiet vegetarian thing without anyone even noticing. And it was sort of the same thing with those logical the logical inconsistencies kind of chipped away and maybe make the transition, to going vegan, which happened very gradually. And I don't have a pinpoint date for it, for when it exactly started. It was one of those things I recognized pretty quickly that, I still had inconsistencies in how I was doing things, and it wasn't, I wasn't doing much better by not, when I was still eating, eggs and dairy. And so just gradually started phasing that out.
Well, no, I had the same thing. Kind of, I did not have a linear journey. It was kind of bumpy back and forth. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. So when you did go vegan or vegan, what did people think in your family?
Yeah, it's it's all over the place. There's definitely been some. It's funny sometimes going to family functions. I know going into family functions what I'm going to do. And when sometimes people make a big deal about trying to accommodate. I'm like, just make what you're going to make. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Like, it'll be fine. But it's funny. I've had some. My one thing we do with Wilberforce, we write a lot of articles. And we always try to. One of the first articles was written by Kelvy Vanderhart. It was in Town Hall. It's called "Save Animals, Cut Government," and that was the whole thing. It was right when Trump got elected. It was okay. So Doge is going to be here. Here's what Doge can do. Here's some entire departments it can cut out that would save animal lives and and taxpayer dollars. Right. And I point to that article because it's very much a kind of a template for what a lot of our articles look like. We talk about, here's ways where we can cut spending, cut government, but then we tie that in with, the cruelty that it would stop. And so I bring that up because my mom was, obviously as a mom, been an avid reader of the stuff we put up, and she gets our newsletters and goes through the articles. And it was funny talking to her. She mentioned to me that she goes, I just, my stepdad and her were basically they went to go to the grocery store to get, they were like, I don't think I want to get meat. And they just kind of been gradually tapering it away, just because the more they read the articles, the more they start, it starts internalizing with them. So I think it's, it's up and down. But I like seeing those, positive responses to it, even ones where I wasn't I wasn't directly targeting.
Right. Yeah. That is exciting to see. And that is the process for some people. I mean, just quietly watching. So it's nice when we can hold a safe space for people where we're not trying to push them into a corner, because I mean, I don't like to be controlled. I don't know anybody that does, so
exactly.
that space. Yes. So, well, how does the peace of not eating creatures today manifest in your life?
I think so. There's a quote from C.S. Lewis that I think I originally found it, I think, from something Matthew Scully wrote. Matthew Scully is a Bush speechwriter that wrote Dominion, and actually that was reading Dominion in high school was instrumental to me stopping eating meat too. And Matthew was involved in getting this all started too. Helped me make some of the connections that helped me get going with it. But getting off track. Sorry. There's a quote from C.S. Lewis. And if one virtue must be cultivated at the expense of all the rest, none has a higher claim than mercy. And I really think just I'm taking this question kind of spiritually, but I think that when you start caring for animals, even if that's as simple as just not eating them, but also just caring for them in general. There's a story that I've shared before where my dog, who passed actually a year ago Sunday, a few years before that, was hit by a car. And my wife grew up Adventist, and she actually grew up more or less vegetarian, had kind of tapered off of that, but always had a just sort of just kind of cultural. She never really had that strong attachment to animals. It wasn't until then, when Pancho was named our dog, who when we were caring for him and kind of taking him, we used to have to carry him out to the front yard in a sling, and then stay out there with him for hours. And there's a lot to it, a lot of and in that, it was when she became passionate about animals as well, and when she really got, you know, as invested in this cause as I am. And I think that mercy, and you know, when you start having that mercy and compassion for animals, it starts just kind of bleeding out elsewhere into your life. Like you just start viewing, you know, I think it enhances your ability to be more forgiving, more caring, more understanding when you're dealing with people in general. And I can't explain that other than just, you know, it's that there's something in that act of just caring for animals.
I think that too. And y'all, whoever, if you're watching, please let us know if you have any questions. Let us know where you're joining from. I feel like that too, when the more connected you are to animals, I mean, for me, the more I can have empathy for others. I mean, all of life. So, I mean, it's a stepping stone to creating empathy. So, because humans are another animal, so we have to treat humans just like we would treat if we're vegans. Hopefully, I mean, if we're vegans, then we should have the same compassion for human animal as the other animals. So
Yeah.
so what is the most memorable experience that you've had in your vegan lifestyle?
Yeah. You know, it's a small one. It's a simple one, but the first event. So Wilberforce does events, doing a lot of both animal events, like we did Ava. I had a panel out there. You and I talked before we started about reducitarian. I had a panel there too. But we also do, and I think this is more central to our what we're trying to accomplish. Libertarian events, conservative events. I'm actually the reason this is my weird background here is I'm in an Airbnb in Phoenix to go do Turning Point USA's America Fest. But the very first one we did was Students for Liberty's LibertyCon, and so just Liberty Convention. But we had a table there, and it was the first time I got the Wilberforce kind of core team that was there from the start in person. And just going and you know, this DC is great for vegan restaurants, and I before doing this, I was never really, you know, as I mentioned, I was like, when I was in the Army, I was very quiet about it. You know, it's always just been a very personal thing for me, and that just kind of going and sharing these people with these people who, you know, kind of, we all sort of came, you know, in different ways, but all kind of came to this from sort of sharing the same values and same ideas, and being able to just kind of have that openly and go to these restaurants without, you know, anyone thinking anything of it, just enjoying that together. It's a, you know, it's a very simple memory, but it was I joke it was one of the only times I ever liked being in DC. So no offense to any DC listeners.
That's too funny. All right. Well, so on the vegan journey, I'm sure you've seen vegans that are struggling and depressed and angry. I mean, what advice would you give to most of the new vegans are in that state of angst? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one. I so I think it's easy when talking to longtime vegans as a new vegan to feel like it's like, here's a set of rules that I need to follow right now, and I'm a failure if I don't, and it's, you know, but that's not the path that, you know, you mentioned that you had a kind of nonlinear bumpy path, and I did too, and I think it's you know, like I don't have the clear you know, date I went vegan, because it's sort of, I treated it the same way I did quitting cigarettes. Was I, you know what, I'm just going to stop beating myself up, and I'm just going to, you know, stop focusing so much on, you know, how long. I feel like the more you count how long you've done it, and the other people are going to feel very differently about this, and that's perfectly fine too. But for me, it's when I, you know, that feels like there's an end point, right? And I'm trying to get to some point, but I'm trying to change this in my life. So it's so I think for me it was helpful to stop focusing on that. I think yeah, just being more be understanding with yourself, be patient with it, you know. And also this is another thing that was helpful for me, was just focusing less on, this is not groundbreaking advice, but focusing less on what you can eat and what you can, and focusing more on what you can, you know, and what you can wear and what you can, like I've got a lot of, you know, it became a lot more fun for my wife and I when we started thinking about, you know, like getting the cookbooks and things like that, and start, you know, focusing on like, oh, here are the cool meals that we can eat and that kind of thing.
Right. Yes, and I'm like you. I don't know my date, or I don't even like to think about dates like that. I
Mhm.
just kind of I don't even want to remember dates that my friends passed away or something. I want to remember you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's just keep
Mhm.
going.
I was at a. It was funny when I got out of the army. I was I was a paratrooper in the 82nd, and uh, people would always ask me how many jumps I had, and I've joked since. I'm like, you know what, I didn't know I was supposed to count that. I mean, everybody seems to have this number. I have no idea. I jumped when they told me to. A
That's
lot.
funny. Well, you better start
Uh,
go back and start
uh,
adding up.
yeah.
That's too funny. All right. Well, I want to talk about the Wilberforce Institute. Tell us about that. How did it begin, and what's its mission?
Yeah, so I'll give you the how I got to it. First start of it, which was I left it. I was working in Republican comms and consulting. I worked for a good consulting company where we were working on campaigns across the country, and working with a lot of different organizations, things like that. But I really wanted to start working on the issues and things that I was most concerned with, that I cared about deeply, and animals was very high on that list. So I left the company and I started trying to do some PR work on my own. Had reached out to Matthew Scully, actually, because had forged a friendship with him probably like a decade ago. But we just stayed in touch, periodically over the years. And so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I have this, you know, conservative media background. Is there anybody in the animal movement who might be looking for that? Do you know of anybody?" And he said no, which was fine, but disappointing. But then the next day, he actually received a call from Ari Nessel, who's a big donor in the animal world, to basically just asking the same thing. So I connected with Ari, and Ari started to help me meet with a lot of the people in the animal movement, help getting involved in these kinds of things. I was helping organizations with their messaging, and kind of all along, I always thought there was a need and a room for a conservative organization of this kind. Um, and as it turned out, there's people who were doing research into that, and I just kind of was helping them along, and realized, you know what, I can do this. So I put together a plan for it and launched it September of last year. So when we launched, it was I immediately got John Connor Cleveland and Kelby Vanderhart on the team to help. Both of them have similar background to me, a lot of PR, a lot of comms. And I knew that that was going to be our strong suit from the get go was the earned media. So we just went on kind of an earned media blitz that first quarter, targeting especially like conservative outlets. We went to the Daily Callers, the town halls, Washington Examiner, that kind of thing. But then we also had some sort of more broad-based national media like Real Clear Politics and Washington Post, The Hill. And we've expanded that as we've gone on, but we in the next quarter out added events, and started doing, going to the grassroots movement. And now coming into our second year, we're going to be working on doing campus debates, debates at events, and we're adding a legislative scorecard and a few other big programs. So it's growing,
Yeah,
and it's exciting.
that's exciting. Yeah, what's the response out there if you're out at these political events?
It's been really good, actually, really positive. That first event that we did, we actually expanded our team from it. We met our development advisor, Christine McPherson. We met another one of our a junior fellow who was basically very active in both the libertarian organizations at his school and the animal rights organizations at his school, which is Isaac de Blasio. He's already been publishing articles for us. And but we get, it's funny. I think there's skepticism on both at those events and at the animal events. We're kind of we're an anomaly at both. But I think when people actually they take time to talk to us, and when we get a chance to talk to them, it's like, what, we're talking about the same stuff here. We're all on the same page on this stuff, and so we also especially at really at both kinds of events, both the animal events and the more political right events. You hear frequently, like, this is something I've thought should exist for a long time. This is something that needed to exist.
Yeah. Yeah, it needs to exist. Exactly. You know what? We do have a question here, but I kind of want to ask it
Sure.
before we go. I mean, it might throw off, but I mean,
Mm.
let's see. I've been vegan for almost 14 years, but I still have angst about animals still suffering. It's hard. It's okay. It's hard to live knowing it's all going on. How do you cope with the underlying
Oh,
grief?
I wish I had a really good answer for that one. That's I mean, it's overwhelming. Sometimes, I feel very blessed to be working full time for animals, and I have to kind of constantly remind myself that it's an absolute blessing to do this, because some days it's just it's overwhelming. I mean, when by necessity, I have to, we talk a lot about factory farming and the cruelty that happens in factory farming. We talk a lot about, and to write these articles, you really have to get granular in those details. And I find myself just, pouring through videos and articles and things that are just, I mean, my Twitter feed is disgusting to look at, and it's overwhelming sometimes. And it's also, it's overwhelming because we focus a lot on, on the ways in which, animal cruelty is funded by the government, it's supported by the government. There's all these structures in place, and that's a very, those systems are very entrenched. They're very big. They have more money than I can fathom, and so it's overwhelming and it's hard. But I think it's, when you think about, I think it's important to just maintain hope and to keep moving forward and to just keep doing your part to, no one of us is going to change everything in the world. No one of us is going to make everything better. But I think if we, we have to try, and we have to try to do our part of it, and it's probably not a great answer. That's one of my greatest anxieties that was just asked about there. And I don't know,
no, it's very hard. I have to just sit quietly and, you know what I mean, what I do, one thing I do is to sit quietly and just send love to all, right? I have to focus that, I love you, I see you, and just send that energy out, because, and then I also have to acknowledge my feelings. It's, it's okay to feel sad, and I allow it. And I also have a rose quartz that I hold, and I feel like that helps, that because I know the love, I feel that rose quartz is love and compassion, and I just send the love from the rose quartz in me to all the animals and all of life, and hold, this sacred space that all is well. But I also know where I've had friends that have seen animals that passed and seen their spirit rise. So that gives me a lot of peace to think, okay, they are going, I mean, I believe it, that they're in a better place. So, I mean, whether that seems hokey or not, but yeah.
No, it doesn't. We were actually, I mentioned we're coming up on a year this Sunday of when my dog passed, and I was just talking to my wife about that, and she, we were with him. He actually, he went on his own. But we had this night with him where we knew it was happening, and so me, my wife, and my daughter, we stayed in the living room with him, and just created like a big family bed there, and just stayed with him the whole night. And when he passed the next day, my wife says exactly that she saw the exact moment, and it was like she could see him going. She saw when he left there, and I I think centering prayer is a big part of my my spiritual practice, and that helps me with kind of staying grounded and connected. And when those things get overwhelming, it's something that I can kind of turn to in the same way. I love what you said about sort of just sending love out. I think that's terrific.
Well, thank you. Yes, and prayer saves my life too, and spirituality, and just getting grounded, and acknowledging it. Yeah, because that's what I mean, if we're stuck at home, that that it's true. It goes out to everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
All of our thoughts, all those prayers, all that love. So it is helping. So, thank you for sharing that. And we have another comment from Ellen. It says, "I agree. Without hope of change, someday I would be so unfunctional. Sadly, systemic changes take decades."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It does, and I think that's another thing to I have to constantly remind myself in that, so I get frustrated, and sometimes I remind myself like, okay, yes, Wilberforce has been around for a year. I didn't end factory farming this year, and that's okay. It's really easy for us to. It's hard and overwhelming to think about these things on that. We want to see that change, and we want to see it now. We want it to be the movie, but these are really things that it's going to take a long time to do. And I'm hopeful that we can shorten that timeline. I think we're going in the right direction, and I think expanding the people that are involved in this, and expanding the framings that we're looking at these issues with, and how we approach them, I think is something that can really expedite that, and do a lot of good for animals in the near term.
Exactly. Yes. And now we've got another response from Storkbat. Thanks so much for answering my sort of impossible question. I know taking action makes a difference. How wonderful your friend has seen an animal's spirit rise. I very much believe our souls go on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for asking it. Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way.
Yes, I triple it. All right. So, what is your the Wilberforce? What is the proudest or most meaningful accomplishment?
Yeah. There's been a few. We're not we're more of trying to build a grassroots movement. But that said, there's been a couple. There's things like, okay, so I wrote an article about sort of from the veterans perspective, and talking about the Army ending, how the Army should end animal experimentation, and our friends at White Coat Waste pushed that out a whole lot, and there's a number of other organizations and people that were pushing that article, and I don't know what percentage it had an impact in it, but then seeing maybe a month or two later that the DoD make that decision. There's just been so much of that this year with the the executive branch ending a lot of different animal experimentation in a lot of different departments, and so seeing that from after, like, when you get to write one of those articles and you see that thing happen, it's very encouraging. A similar one. I mentioned in the bio, I had a Wall Street Journal article a few months ago about this owl program, where it's for barred owls and spotted owls, where they're the idea is basically wipe out one to help the other, which is I think there's a lot of hubris, a lot of just it's a perfect example for me of like where you go when it's just sort of unchecked government, when you have people who are bureaucrats making unelected bureaucrats kind of making these broad decisions and actions. But one thing was, so when I wrote that article, we had some help getting that out to a number of Republican senators. It was actually Rand Paul and John Kennedy, two Republican senators, who introduced a bill to stop that. And something that was encouraging, that didn't pass, unfortunately, but what was encouraging to me was, we had the Senate Democrats that voted for it. I think it was Bernie Sanders, Gillibrand, and Cory Booker who voted for it, but all the other Senate Democrats voted against it. Well, my article was sent to every single Republican senator, and we had it wasn't all of them, but it was I think, maybe I don't know, a high percentage of them, which I had the number offhand, but voted in favor of that bill. Now it might just be there's politics involved in that. It might have been the Republicans thing, and like I said, I don't want to spike the football too hard on things, but seeing like, okay, this is actually being a Republican-led effort, and something that we were loud and vocal on. We were kind of some of the the early people talking about that. It's an encouraging thing to see. But just sort of more broadly and less tangibly, I think we've been, as I mentioned, it's been a really positive support all around, and we've built a really, really good team of really passionate people. We're just now turning that into staff. It was all volunteer for the whole for a while there, and since we launched, and it was that I think itself is the accomplishment I'm most proud of. Is just getting that team, getting getting people, having people reach out to us and thank us for doing this, and seeing being really excited about this and wanting to get involved in it. And that it's not a single moment, but it's just kind of the overall year has been very exciting.
Well, yeah, it sounds very exciting for a new organization. Yes. And so I was thinking, what about people that might say, why are you so worried about owls? And why are you why do you care about animals when you could be helping people? I mean, I hear that a lot. What's your response to those people?
Yeah, so I got asked that actually about, it's funny that the owls seem to beget that one, right? And I got asked that because that was also during kind of government shutdown time. And it was sort of posed to me, well, why are we worried about owls when we're, the government shut down and all this? I'm like, well, all right, if we're from just a practical standpoint, right? If we can't get the government open, should we be spending millions of dollars to kill an animal for no reason? Like, is that something that's actually going to be at all productive for, getting a functional government going again, right? Now we're out of those woods, sort of, but that was one aspect of it. But I also just, I think factory farming itself, right? Just take factory farming. In a year, kills roughly as many animals as the amount of humans that have ever existed on the face of the earth. Maybe a little over a year, but about that, right? That just the scale and numbers of that. I mean, I can't, to act like what we're doing to animals is a small part of the evils in the world. I think is an ignorant perspective. I think that animals, you have to, like, even people who don't. It's not saying that human issues matter less. It's not saying that that humans don't have a special and significant value, but if you're saying unless you're saying animals have no value whatsoever, right? It doesn't make sense to me to not take these issues seriously and take their well-being seriously. I mean, they're part of God's creation. They're individuals with sentience and emotional capacity and relationships, and it's, I don't know, it's just never been, it's sort of self-evident to me that how they're treated and what we do to them matters.
It matters. Yeah. You don't have to convince me. It
Of
matters.
course. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. No, I think about it because I volunteer at the nature center. I think about our owls. I can see them. I love their curiosity, the way they look at you. It's just, it's so different. I don't know. I mean, it's magical.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
We had one land in our backyard right after I published that article. It felt like he was
wow.
saying thank you.
Yeah, saying thank you. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, let's see. Here we have another question here. Do you educate about the humane myth?
I'm not familiar.
I'm not sure either. Please let us know about that. And then, so, all right. So how has your organization grown throughout the years?
Well, it's only the 1 year. So
that's true. All right, let's just say for the months.
Yeah, through the months. Well, yeah, I think I can handle it this way. We were when we first started, like I mentioned this before, it was all earned media, and we added to the grassroots part of it. But we've this is, so far as I know, the first organization of this kind. There's no other organization doing kind of operating in the space, like working with particularly like conservatives and libertarians on animal issues. And so there's no roadmap for how to do it right, how to approach it correctly. And it's been interesting just, in talking with people and taking, it's changed dramatically, like in a short period of time. We're kind of constantly evolving, and sometimes I look back on some of the things like what we planned on doing, and I realize like, wow, we actually have completely shifted from that now, and in this short period of time, because we're seeing pretty real time what's working, what's not, and so it's trying to think of a good example of that. But one thing is you know, this is, I know I mentioned Matthew Scully a few times, but I'll mention once more. His more recent book, Fear Factories, is basically a compiling of all of the writing he's done over the last few decades about animals. And in the preface of that, he talks about, and I don't have the quote handy, but he talks about how, you know, when he first came out into space, you know, right on the heels of being a George Bush speechwriter, and you know, his first started doing it was more tentative, you know, and it was kind of unsure of how it was going to be received on both sides, and so it creates this kind of like, you know, this unsureness to go into it. And I realized that, you know what, that's something that we definitely had. We were really worried about blowback constantly. You know, it was like, are we gonna, you know, we're gonna say the wrong thing in one or the other sphere, and you know, and the yeah, it's going to create this negative reception. But what I realized is like we're all very authentically and genuinely coming from this position of being, we're pro liberty people, you know, we're pro animal people. These are our values. These are where we've come from, and being sort of confident in that, and just leading from the heart on these things. It's you know, we've been able to be more, I think, stronger in the way we talk about this stuff, and less tentative when we're approaching the issues. And I think that has a better effect.
Well, that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, like, are you speaking logically? Are you speaking from the heart? And who are you speaking to? And knowing that, I mean, that's emotional intelligence right there. I mean, knowing who you're talking to. So, yeah, I mean, what y'all are doing is amazing, that you're getting out there and bringing people together to be the voice for animals. So,
Thank
yeah.
you.
All right, now we have another. Here we go. This might be about, it's Storkbat. Okay. I mean, in addition to educating about factory farming, which often can make people seek out smaller farms' supposed better welfare, when some of the worst cruelty happens on small farms.
Yeah, I think so. I think most of where we focus our area, our discussion, where we talk about it, is coming from areas where taxpayers are paying for it, regardless of what size farm, regardless of what kind of farm. Not that we're exclusively that. One of the things too is I try to keep a, you know, like a lot of like ideological diversity within Wilberforce, because it's you know, it's not the group or the audience we're reaching is not like a single audience. It's you know, we're the political right now in you know, in America is I mean, yeah, the difference between a libertarian and kind of your standard conservative is pretty broad, and so we've tried to stay pretty broad on you know, where we're the areas where we talk about and how we approach things. So, but yeah, I think, I mean, we're anywhere where we see cruelty, and we find a good way where we can talk about it, and we can, you know, expand upon it and make people more aware of it. We're open to doing, for sure.
All right. And she also says, also very thankful for you and your organization and going into conservative spaces to educate. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the support. Thank you for the questions.
Yes, thank you for the questions. All right, let's see. What's the next question I have for you? All right, how has your role changed in your organization? Has it changed much since you started it?
It is changing. I think it's you know, was working, you know, it was entirely volunteer. My whole team was entirely volunteer. We're moving to bringing on some staff, and it's going to be those people that you know, have been working with us already on the volunteer level, and which is going to be you know, move us from being kind of all those back end stuff, being kind of a one man shop, to you know, being able to do some of those different things, which is going to enable me to focus on some other things, like hoping to write a book on the ways in which government harms animals, and yeah, planning to do those things, which I wouldn't have had the time for otherwise. So yeah, it's definitely shifting, but kind of like everything else is, I guess.
Right. Yes. Well,
with new and growing.
Y'all, if you're watching, please subscribe, and please make sure you share this with other friends. So how can people get, I mean, well, what's the website, or how can they get a hold of you and your organization?
Sure. Our website is just Wilberforce Institute. And that's Wilberforce. A lot of people jump to think it's Wilbur, like you are from Charlotte's
Charlotte
Web, which
Web.
I like, but it's named after William Wilberforce. So Wilberforce Institute, and I would really the biggest thing is sign up there. You'll get our monthly newsletter and articles throughout the month. We're also going to be unveiling soon our legislative scorecard, which that's the best way to get there. If there's things that you want to be involved in and or have ideas or thoughts or questions, the email address at that website too does the same. You can reach us there, and we will we'll get back to you. We'd love to hear from you. That's the biggest thing is pushing up there.
Wonderful. Yeah. So who is standing up for animals out there in the political realm? I mean, who do we need to really, I mean, what can we do, and who is already doing the work?
In political office or like elected officials. Yeah. I because we're a C3, I want to be careful. I'm not endorsing anybody, but it's interesting. And our scorecard, will reflect this stuff too better. But offhand, it's interesting. There's a lot of people. I mentioned John Kennedy and Rand Paul earlier. It's funny. John Kennedy is somebody who people wouldn't necessarily think of as being a big leader on animals. And he's Louisiana conservative, has the viral videos left and right. But he is somebody who is adamantly passionate about his past number of legislation on there. Another one who I think is I'll try to jump to some of the surprising ones, but like Nancy Mace is actually she highlights and she actually released did a press release on I think it was something like 50 animal rights. She said animal rights legislation that she's sponsored or pushed forward. There's a lot there, that people wouldn't necessarily suspect that are very, very gung ho and very adamant for animals. Everybody on the Animal Caucus is great. I know like Brian Fitzpatrick and Amelia Takis are two that come to mind. But there's actually a good number of them, and I want to see that grow, obviously. And one of the things I'd like to see more of is I think that there's a strong tendency, and this is left and right, to the people, people will care about animals. They'll push forward animal legislation, but they won't. But I think that the chipping away of the kind of regulatory capture you see from big ag and the subsidies, those kinds of things, like that's one part where I'd like to see a stronger presence. I think it's really hard for people to go after those big interests and to remove those big interests from it's actually something that Trump talked about in his campaign, was the revolving door, from these companies to the lobbyists to the executive branch, and kind of going through there. I think we're not seeing enough of that, of people shutting that down and cutting that out in big ag especially. So that's something I would love to see people really pick up the torch on and run with.
Yeah, and so what would you say this past year? I mean, has been some milestones for animals. I mean, what have you seen change in this past year?
I think the animal experimentation, removing government animal experimentation has to be one of the bigger stories in the animal movement for the last bunch of years. And that's, notably White Coat Waste working with a lot of conservative organizations, working with a lot of conservatives, talking about this from a cutting spending, cutting government perspective, I think has really, is part of why that was so successful. A big part of why that was so successful. I think that's one where I think that's got to be one of the bigger milestones. I think, killing once again now is the SOB Act, but it was the EATS Act before. But at least I'm sure it'll resurface in some other way. But getting that squashed for the year is a huge win for animals.
And what is that?
So that was basically, there's Prop 12 in California where and there's also I think it's question 3 in Massachusetts, but basically there's been, ever since those passed, there's been this federal effort to effort to basically to override it and to dictate how these companies can, or how states can decide the standards for animals within their state. This is it's an interesting one because I think it's where conservatives in particular might be interested, is it's a federalism issue, right? And that was actually when it went to the Supreme Court, was what Amy Coney Barrett, I think, said was that it's not, it's not up to the federal government to decide. Or no, it was actually Gorsuch. Sorry, it was Gorsuch said it's not for the federal government to decide what, how and what manner, California sells pork chops, right? It's not within their purview, basically, and that's something I think is, I think it's important. So this law goes.
All right, let's see here. Hopefully Liam will come back. Let's see. All right, y'all, I have a signal, right? Okay. Well, while we're on pause, please make sure you go to www.all-creatures.org. And if you want to leave a one-time donation, we would appreciate it, or a recurring donation to help sponsor these programs like this. And let us know what you think in the comments. I'm very grateful that y'all are here. And we do have a comment with all sorts of animals. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I don't know answers to these kind of questions. So hurry back, Liam. Oh, no. Right when I say that. Well, I'm sure he could pop back in. So let's just cross our fingers. All right, y'all. Well, I mean, some of these kind of things intimidate me. The legislature and knowing all the laws, it can be overwhelming, but I think the main thing is that don't let that stop you from going and volunteering, or going and talking to your Congress people, going and talking to senators. When you go down and talk to the legislators, and it makes a big impact, and we can set up appointments to go talk to them and tell them what is important to us. They want to hear from us. Okay, here he comes. So that was my 2 cents. Now we've got the 2 cents is over.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. The perils of traveling.
Yeah. So what were you saying?
I don't know exactly where I was, but basically, I think with those efforts, the thing to keep in mind is we can't have the biggest players in this industry deciding how this industry is regulated, right? It can't be, for people who are, it's bad for people who are pro regulation, because it's what's the point of putting these regulations in that context? And for those of us who are more skeptical about regulatory solves, it's just another example of exactly what we're talking about, exactly what we're worried about, is that regulatory capture and cronyism that just sort of naturally comes.
All right. Well, I was talking while you disappeared about going and talking to your senators, your representatives. I mean, get down there and go in. And this is intimidating for me. I mean, it's hard. It's a lot to take in, I'll just say. So, I mean, for people that might feel the same way and think, I can't volunteer with Liam's organization because I don't even know, I barely even vote. What would you say to that? I want to help, but what would you say to that person?
I think that you probably know as much as the people that you're that are currently doing it, right? Or more, and I think it's not necessarily the people who are involved in policy and in taking action for animals in whatever capacity. I think one of the biggest barrier to entry is willingness, and I think that's one of those things, is if you're not doing this, your voice isn't involved in it. You're not getting your value. You're not going to further your values if you don't find a way to get involved in furthering them. And
so if they say, my vote doesn't really count, I mean, I hear that a lot, and I've tried to beg people to vote, and they don't want to do it. What do you say to someone that says that?
It definitely doesn't if you don't vote. It's I think it's in some ways that's your way of buying your stake. You're showing that you're invested. You're showing that you're putting forth your effort, and gives you room to be nice and critical afterwards too.
Yes. Yeah, it does. You're right. You're right. Well, so if there's what about the Wilberforce would we not know? I mean, what is something that you could share that we wouldn't know about the Wilberforce that might inspire people to come and join your team?
I think it's. Ooh, I don't know. Ultimately, we're all animal people at the core, right? It's something that we've all come to this from. There's no precursor that made us something where we had like a track record to go into it, if that makes sense. Like it's something that it's entirely because this is a passion issue for us. We've all been writing about this and caring about this in disparate places prior to this, and so I think it's just that we're right now a lot of organizations pop up and you sort of think, well, what are they, what's their real agenda, or who's funding them, or what are they trying to do, or what's and for us it's really truly we're all just animal people. We want better, we want to make things better for animals.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what your political party is, you still get along.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a crucial thing is I talked a lot with organizations that are trying to sort of figure out ways of it's always worded as like softening their message or changing their message so they can kind of appeal to more people, and I don't think that that's necessarily the way to go about it, right? We're talking about these issues and framing these issues in a way that makes sense to people who believe in reducing government, who believe in who are very liberty focused, reverence of life focused, and have these kinds of these natural frameworks. I wouldn't say to another group that maybe considered more of the left that they should necessarily dilute their message. I think it's if their framing makes sense for their audience, they should stick with that. But what we should recognize is that where I think if you look at let's talk about like Republicans and Democrats in a second, and not like trying to one better than the other or anything. But if you look at if you're part of an animal organization and your chief concern is animals, the Democratic Party their chief concern isn't animals, right? Same for the Republican Party. So while the Wilberforce Institute, our framings might be different, we might approach these things differently. It makes more sense for us to go across the aisle, and just using us as an example in this, but to work together for animals than it does to keep hoping for these people who may pay lip service to animals, may kind of consider it like a tertiary concern, hoping for them to act when the real allies can be found across the aisle on people who are just as concerned with these issues as you are.
That makes sense. I mean, we all have to come together for animals, no matter what side of the aisle we are on. I mean, because there's not enough of us, so we can't be fighting each other.
Yep, exactly.
So wonderful. So let me hear any final thoughts, and I want to also remind everybody to subscribe. But give us your final thoughts on whatever you want it to be. Let's just hear your wisdom.
No, I don't know if I have much of that, but I'm trying to grow in it. I think I really appreciate conversations like this. We had mentioned kind of briefly before we jumped on, we have different political views, but I think that's I think that's maybe the main thing here is right now the animal movement is speaking to at best half the country, right? And where we spent a lot of this call talking about how overwhelming the plight of animals is, how overwhelming the fight is here. We're not, it's not going to happen if you're only pulling from half of the country. There's reason to expand that and to talk to everybody, and so that's what we're trying to do. and from our standpoint also, it's there's a lot of conservatives out there and libertarians out there who have all of us in this organization who have wanted to be who wanted to work for animals but haven't found a good inroads for it. So we're hoping to give a home to them. But really, it's another. It's one way to look at it if you're not coming from our perspective on this, which is, we need to reach more people. We need to get we need to grow this movement. And not only that, but okay, so we've talked about the experimentation, kind of white coat waste, and there's a lot of really good organizations that were working on that for a lot of years. But one of the things that really started to move the needle on it was taking a different framing with it, and taking in this case, a government cutting framing. I think when you come from a different ideological perspective, you'll approach these issues differently. You'll think about them differently. You have a natural framing that's different. And so having more framings, having more approaches to these issues it will be a better solution, right? It's going to be something that's going to give us more, a greater chance of moving forward, because we'll come at it a different way naturally.
Yes, we need that. We need all these little streams and rivers and ways of thought, to take action about this big monumental atrocity. So, well, thank you so much, Liam, for being here and sharing your perspective. Really cool. I'm very inspired. So we'll keep checking in with you a few years and see, how the Wilberforce has moved on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's stay in touch. And thank you very much for having me.
Yes. And thanks everybody for watching. Bye, everyone.
Bye.